Hey there, YouTube. So this is going to be my second reply to Wong Yu, and I'm going to try and stick to script. This is something hard for me to do because I like to talk a lot, if you guys haven't noticed. But basically, I'm going to read the prompts or the comments section by section from Wong Yu's replies to me in the video that I wrote, and then I'm going to read my responses to Wong Yu. Wong Yu writes, "Thank you for your response. All of the freedoms, sexual, reproductive, no-fault divorce, spousal rape, workplace treatment, etc., gained by second-wave feminism are great. I support freedom. I am a libertarian. So individual freedoms and rights are the most important issues. The sexual revolution is very confusing to most men. It seems as though women wanted to show more and fool around, but men were not supposed to view women as sexual objects. Seems like a big double standard." Which actually, the response that I wrote to one of one doesn't really fit what my ideas are right now, so I'm just going to skip that and be free. The thing is that you kind of gotta remember that, especially at that time period, we're still kind of coming out of Victorian age sexual ideas. I mean, Alfred Kinsey, if you know who that is, had only had his basic statistics of sexual behavior in their book forms, both the male and the female, out for 30 years at that point. And still at this point in the world, many people still believed in old wives' tales about sexuality. And naturally, the core evidence that the growing body of evidence that we had, which some of those cultural ideas were still, women should be virginal until marriage, and even after marriage, women should only be completely monogamous, and because otherwise they're a slut, a whore, trashy. Whereas men, you have to admit that then, now, throughout time, it's kind of been seen as more okay for men to sleep around. I mean, ideally, monogamy is a good situation to be in, but women were still seen as you're supposed to be virginal, whereas men were not, per se. But in all reality, both sexes now are highly sexualized and highly objectified. I mean, the idea of this man with a six-pack and all the muscles being the ideal, that's fucked up for both sexes. I think part of what second-wave feminism did, as far as that did, was it helped women take back their bodies and said, yes, this is my sexuality, and yeah, I'm going to rock that bikini, but it's because I want to, not because you're telling me to. But even within that idea, that can be kind of deconstructed and played with, depending on what your perspective from the second wave feminist movement was. I mean, it was second wave feminist where you get the idea of the bra burners, which was actually apparently a barrel of undergarments set on fire at the Miss America pageant in protest of the bikini contest. Anyway, moving on to 2 of 6. Before, men and women were supposed to be sexually monogamous, so sexual freedom was actually gained by both men and women. When reading about second-wave feminism, it seems as if some of the feminists, including Linda Gordon, were equating the nuclear family to patriarchy and wanted to destroy the family. Many also thought of the father as likely abuser. Many women within the second wave had difficult childhoods, so transference of their pain seems somewhat normal. And my response? I think monogamy per se is the ultimate relationship, but it's certainly highly... I don't think monogamy per se is the ultimate relationship, but is certainly highly supported in most cultures in the Western world, especially when it's set up around children. um, if both parties choose to have children. For success, basically, having two parents is better than having one parent. And this is confirmed by studies when it comes to relating to LGBT parents. It's not whether they have a mother and a father, it's having two committed adults, which is definitely why a monogamous couple is seen as more the ideal when it comes to raising a child. And I could see how many feminists would take childhood experiences and use that as fuel in their politics against men. I mean, in all honesty, as I've admitted on a couple of other videos, being date raped by a third wave feminist has fueled my drive to fight third wave feminism and fight the hypocrisy of it. I'll fully admit that. Going on to part 3. However, many others seem to take up the rape and abuse culture and transfer those onto innocent men. This led to lopsided divorce laws and parental custody laws. Now, NOW is currently attempting to increase restrictions on fathers. National Women's Organization is currently attempting to increase restriction on fathers' rights within many U.S. states. This just seems like a continuation of the useless father principles on the second wave feminism. Child visitation and threats are used in divorce negotiations as bargaining devices to increase settlements for women. And my response: parental rights, I agree, is something that society got wrong. In those rare cases where both parties do not take responsibility for themselves, a pregnancy was formed, and one partner wanted nothing to do with the offspring, but was genetically a parent, I can see how things like child support as ordered by the court has been a benefit. But today, those same rulings have led to a system that is stacked against men. There are so many great men out there who want to be dads, but are disadvantaged by the court. Just to go freehand for a moment, I've talked a couple of times about a couple of my friends up in Toledo where there's a father who it would actually be in the children's better interest for him to be the main home for the children, but he is having to fight tooth and nail just because he doesn't have a vagina when it comes to taking care of his kids. The court is stacked against him. So going back onto this, in this area, it should boil down to who can take care of the kids the best, as to where the children live, and for the couple and the court to make both parents have the opportunity to take care of and support the kids to the best of their abilities. Ironically enough, these ideas are kind of a LGBT issue as well. Occasionally you'll hear about individuals who were not as lucky as I was, and I was lucky enough that I came out when I was 18. But there are cases, even today, where there will be people who ignore their feelings and have a heterosexual relationship for who knows how long and end up being a later life LGBT. They'll come out later, and while it's less per se, it doesn't happen as often as it used to, but there are many cases where the courts will take somebody's sexual orientation into factor and will rule against that parent who happens to be gay or lesbian or bisexual in getting equal visitation to their kids. I mean, ultimately, as I'm sure you would agree, friend Wong Yu, it shouldn't be about having an innie or an outie in your shorts. It should be about both parents still being able to invest in their kids equally and be able to support their kids equally even though they're not together. Which I think is definitely something we can agree on, even though I can see how second wave feminists would not. And, it has to be noted that I would think to some degree this might have been another reactionary thing, because you have to admit that for quite a long time in the American court system, because women didn't even have right to property, the kids would often go to the men, and the women would be left in a bad situation, penniless. Still could see how some of those rulings might have been swung the other way to overcompensate, as is happening, and has happened quite a bit in the court system in the last 50 years since the civil rights movement really began. So, on to 406. I have even heard of false allegations of spousal and child abuse and rape within divorce. This also seems like a continuation of the male rape culture claims. Even non-feminists use this against men. It seems as though the movement does not denounce bad behavior from its supporters, or perhaps even partially supporters use these allegations to gain more supporters. And my response: I will give acknowledgement to false rape allegations and abuse allegations being made by some, and as noted, I am a survivor. So false allegations of rape piss me off to a great degree. And it makes it harder for actual survivors, because it leads to the survivors being put more on trial just as much as the accused, if not more so, at least in the American courts. Which, from what I hear of other courts throughout the world, it's not like that. But yeah, I totally agree. Men are not designed to rape, given that quotation's actually taken out of context quite a bit from what I understand, but it pisses me off to the nth degree when men are hypersexualized to the fact that to the point where some people accuse they accuse men of not being able to keep it in their shorts. Which, as a survivor, women are just as likely to rape as men. It's not a matter of what's in your shorts, it's a matter of what's in your head, and is a person acknowledging and valuing the sanctity of someone else's body. So, that's my 2 cents on rape. Part 5 of 6. I think the Equal Rights Amendment, ERA, would have prevented third wave from implementing some of the more superior rights stuff. Sorry, there's really dry air in here. Women tend to vote in high numbers, so it seems possible. Some have attempted to link Marxism to oh, sorry, I jumped paragraphs. Back to 5 of 5. I think the Equal Rights Amendment, ERA, would have prevented some of third wave implementing of superior rights stuff, such as affirmative action. But I thought this might have been a turning point from equal rights to superior rights as a goal within the movement. ERA would have also given rights to LGBT community, which is something feminists seem to ignore. And my response? I actually had to Google ERA. Yeah, you would think that with dating a feminist and taking a couple women's studies classes I wouldn't have to, but I did. So, upon reading the ERA, I can see where you, Mr. or Miss Wong Yu, are coming from. Though I would change one word of the ERA from sex, as in what's in your shorts, to gender, as in what's in your head. So it would be more inclusive of transgender people, and I can see how it would benefit the LGBT. Because if by constitution somebody could not discriminate against others on the basis of gender, marriage, it would completely blind justice to sex. or to what gender somebody identifies as. So things like marriage equality wouldn't matter. It would already have been decided. Hey, justice can't tell. You don't have to prove what your gender is. So therefore, yeah, that couple's married, that couple's married. Whatever. Though, though of course when I say some of this stuff, it makes me feel like I'm digging my eye out with a spoon. I would have to counter your idea that some feminists don't support the LGBT community. Please correct me if I misunderstood that statement. I have known so many self-identified straight allies who are feminists who completely support the LGBT, or the LGB at least. Though I have known some second wavers who do not support transgender people. Heck, I knew of a baby boomer generation lesbian feminist who thought that that gentleman who gave birth to his children should have his gender revoked just because he gave birth rather than his wife giving birth. Anyway, moving on to 6 of 6. As for socialism, I thought feminists were attempting to use somewhat socialist programs as means to gain a voter-controlled matriarchy. Women tend to vote in high numbers, so it seems possible. So have attempted to link Marxism and feminist ideologies. Gloria Steinem seems to talk a lot about class struggle and different tax changes, credits, deductions. I also think socialism would be I also do not think socialism would be acceptable within the U.S., but I see growing support. And my final reply. As noted in the video I made after my original reply to Wong Yu, on paper, socialism as an economic system is okay. People owning the companies, therefore ensuring fair wages, fair treatment, fair benefits, and so on. But just as capitalism can spiral into feudalism, socialism can spiral into fascism. When the majority rule jumps from the economy to the politics, stuff gets really nasty. And taking a bridge from that, the idea of turning the patriarchy into a matriarchy rather than an egalitarian system is fucked up. Though I've known feminists, third wavers particularly, who wanted a socialist system, which that kind of scares the fuck out of me, because I've seen what some radical third wave feminists think of society and think of culture and want to do to society. And yeah, I mean, part of that is my bias because I have personal issues with somebody who was third wave feminist who did something really nasty to me. But the way that her and her friends would talk, even about like body types and whatnot, it's sick. It was sick. So Wong Yu, I look forward to your next reply if this video is somehow coherent. And I'm certainly enjoying this exchange. So peace out, YouTubes.